Today, let's make an animal ear bonnet. Welcome, I do sewing and DIY related content, and today we are making this animal ear bonnet. Now, this was actually a free pattern I found online. It comes with about 3 different items you can make. One they call a cat ear bonnet, one is a bunny ear bonnet, and then the other is a witch's hat. I was trying to make mine be almost a little more curved. I was originally going for a bear. We could go back and forth of whether it looks like that or not, which is why I'm just calling it now an animal ear bonnet, but we can walk through the steps. One of the big thing that I noticed with this is I wanted to use faux fur. They do not necessarily say what type of fabric you can or cannot use. With this being a free pattern, there isn't a ton of information with it, but it works enough to get us started. So now I'm just going to go through, cut all of these pattern pieces out. One thing I will say to note is that it does not include seam allowance, so you need to add your own seam allowance when you are cutting these out. It recommends, I believe it was 1/2 centimeter. You could decide how much you want to add or remove from that. So with all of my items cut out, I'm now going to start the process of pinning everything up. For the ears, I did one piece of faux fur and another piece of more of a lining. This way it was easier to use, and we're just going to be pinning this up around more of like the curved portion, or if it was a cat ear, kind of like those 2 points that would come together. Then I'm also going to be sewing up the gusset front. So for this was where I started to get a little bit confused, just because it was difficult to figure out which lines, like edges of the pattern the write-up was talking about. I did basically the 2 that seemed to match the best, which that was like the on the side front gusset going with that main middle gusset. And then I just pinned all this up so that it would be nice and ready to go. So you can see that those side front gussets have sort of a curved edge, so I matched that with the middle gusset front edges and repeated it for the lining too. Once I had all of that done, I then did one more preparation, and that was for the gusset back. So you have this long rectangular piece for the gusset back, and then you have 2 gusset back sides, and along those you're going to have like this one curved edge, and you're going to be matching that with the long gusset back edges. And so I just pinned all of this in place so that I could sew it on my sewing machine, and then repeated those exact same steps for the lining as well. So I have one piece that's the lining, and then one that is the gusset back, and then you also have the same for the front. So now I'm just going through and sewing all of this up. Now, if you have never worked with faux fur before, it gets messy and it can be a little thick to work through. So I would highly recommend just taking your time. If you notice that you need to use a thicker needle, you could definitely switch that out, but you will get a really fun product at the end. So now that I have all of this nice and sewn up, it's just time to go through, trim a lot of the seam allowance, and then clip the curves. This is incredibly important, especially when working with faux fur, because it is so thick. You could also grade some of the seams, which is making one side of the seam allowance slightly smaller than the other side. And I'm just going to be turning these ears right side out, so poking them up. If you use something that was very lightweight, you may want to add a little stuffing just to help them stay more upright and in their shape. So now it's time to pin the ears in place. The pattern said to follow the notches that were in the pattern pieces. I found that this made the ears be slightly lower. As you're going to see, my ears look a little bit lower on the sides. I probably would have moved these up a little bit more, but maybe I just missed something in the directions. And then at the same time, I also did match the gusset back and front lining pieces together so I could have the lining completed. So now with all of that done, I'm just going to take both of these things over to my sewing machine. So I'm going to sew the ears in place onto the front gusset, and then I'm just going to be sewing the lining up as well. Now it's time for us to go through and match with right sides together, the gusset front with the gusset back. So I'm just going all the way around on that curve and pinning all of this in place. This is going to be thick to sew through, so just sort of as a little reminder, recommendation that as you go through, you're going to really want to take your time with your sewing machine with this. I found that mine did struggle really trying to sew through the seam allowances with those 2 layers, so something to sort of keep in mind that you may have to do this in individual steps. Now that we have all of this done though, you can see we have our ears in place. It's starting to look like a bonnet with little animal ears. So now it's just time for us to add the lining. So with right sides together, I'm matching the lining with the faux fur, and then I'm just going to be pinning this all the way around that front curve to hold it in place, and this is going to give us a really nice and neat finish where we won't have to worry about any of those raw edges. The pattern actually said that the lining was optional, so if you were finishing off your edges or using a material that didn't fray, you could always skip the lining too. So now this part I'm just going to trim off any of that extra seam allowance, making it so I clip the curves and then just turn this right side out. And now we really have the basis for our bonnet. All that's left to do is sort of finish off this raw edge at the bottom and add a ribbon so we can tie it around. So for the ribbon, I did sort of do this my own way. After going through it a couple times, trying to read through it, what I did was I folded this 100 by 10 centimeter piece of fabric in half, and then I pinned up both of those short edges, and then I found the middle and I marked that, and then I determined how big of a gap to leave so that I could insert this bonnet into it. So you can see on either side I have about probably around like 30 centimeters or so pinned up, and then I'm just going to take a seam all the way down that short edge and then going all the way to where I left that first mark, and then I will leave it open and then repeat for the second half. This is going to give me a finished kind of end on either side, but I'm going to have an opening that I can insert my bonnet into so that I can almost use it in a way like binding and have a really neat and clean finish. So now I'm just going to turn this right side out. So here's what that ribbon sort of looks like. You can see we have this opening. So now I'm just going to take my bonnet and insert it into the middle. So I still had that middle marked, and then I'm just going to be marking where the bonnet would go, and then just pin this all the way up so that it is getting captured on both sides. And then I can just take one really long seam and close all of this up. The bonnet would be attached and it would have the ribbon on it. So a really fun and easy way to sew through this. I found my sewing machine did not have an issue getting through this either. And here is what the completed bonnet looks like. So that's why I'm calling this just animal ears. Whatever animal you would like it to be, comment down below. What animal do you think this is? It's definitely a funny and silly little project, but I had a lot of fun making it. I think that it did turn out like an animal. I could see it being a monkey, but I can also sometimes see it being a cat. And then I can wear this with my faux fur jacket, if you remember, that I made back in 2024. So it will be a really easy DIY Halloween costume. And as a reminder, the free pattern that I used is in the description below in case you want to print out this pattern as well. You do have to provide some contact information as it is through their website. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. This is our last Halloween make of the season, so happy Halloween.